One of the most interesting things I've personally learned about reinvention isn't the change itself. It's actually watching people around you struggle with it. I remember when I relocated to Doha and I chose to step back from my professional work, several people, almost verbatim, would say, "That's not like you. That's not like you to not have a project going," or "That's not like you to just do nothing. That's not like you to not be working." And at first I was taken aback by like, what do you mean that's not like you? That's not like you. And then after the time off, I started to like believe like, you know what, that isn't like you. And then after I sat with it for a while, I realized they were absolutely right. It wasn't like me. It was like the new me, the one they hadn't met yet. Welcome to the Power of Becoming. I'm Sandy Coffey, and this is Season 1, New Beginnings. Today we're talking about what no one tells you about starting over. The people who love you will try to pull you back into the version of yourself they recognize, not because they don't want you to grow, but because your evolution disrupts their understanding of who you are. And you have to be willing to let them be uncomfortable with that. We're starting with the foundation. Understanding the difference between who you've been and who you're becoming, and why you can't design your new identity while performing your old one. So, when was the last time you did something that prompted someone to say, "That's not like you"? And most importantly, how do you respond? Did you laugh it off and explain yourself? Did you feel guilty? Did you quietly adjust your behavior back to something more familiar? Because here's what "that's not like you" actually means to me, anyway. It means please stay recognizable. Your evolution is inconvenient. Pretty tough, right? That's harsh. This is where most people's reinvention dies, not in the decision to change, but it's in the moments when someone else they care about asks them to stay the same. You know, the truth about starting over that no one tells you is you're not changing who you are. You're releasing who everyone else needed you to be. In my recent newsletter on my Substack, I wrote about carrying what isn't yours. The expectations, the beliefs, the identities that may have been handed to you by your mother, your partner, your industry, your culture, and your younger self who didn't know any better. You've been performing these identities for so long that you think they're you. They're possibly not. And the way I think about this is through something we see in nature all the time. Think about a crab or a lobster. When they're growing, they need a hard shell to protect them. But eventually, they outgrow it. Your past identities work exactly the same way. They protected you in the past while you were developing, but now they're too small to contain who you are now. These versions of you were essential. They allowed you to navigate the world safely while you were figuring things out, yes, but they were never meant to contain you forever. And yet we cling to them so desperately. Why? Because letting go of old identities feel like betrayal. But that's not what's happening. What's happening is evolution, and evolution requires release. Now, there's a distinction I need to make here, and it's one that completely changed how I think about this. It's realizing the difference between identity and identification. The difference between the two literally clicked since I've been here in Doha. Your identity is who you are at your core. They represent your values, your essence, your authentic self. Your identifications are the labels you wear. They're your job titles, your relationship statuses, achievements, and your roles. When people say, "That's not like you" to me now, they're mourning my identifications. The television host, the always producing creative, the multi-hyphenated woman with the packed schedule and the multiple businesses. But my identity, that was finally getting room to breathe. And as a result, I have never felt so alive and so present in my life. So why do we resist this? Why do we fight our own evolution? We resist starting over not because we don't know who we're becoming. We resist it because 9 times out of 10, we do know. And becoming that person requires disappointing people. And somewhere along the way, we learned that other people's comfort is our responsibility, that their approval is required for us to evolve. It's not. Your evolution is not up for a committee review. When I chose to step back from work and take time to shape my next chapter, I wasn't asking for permission. I was making a choice that aligned with who I was becoming, regardless of whether it made sense to anyone else. That's the freedom you're looking for. Not freedom from responsibility or consequences, but the freedom from the belief that you need everyone's approval to evolve. I'll let you know that your identity is something you design deliberately and intentionally. You are not discovering yourself like a buried treasure. You are not finding yourself like a set of lost keys. You are designing yourself. You're building yourself. If you don't like the identity you're currently performing, that's on you to change. But before we go further, I want to talk about what actually happens when you start releasing those old identities. There's this narrative that once you let go of who you were, you'll immediately feel lighter, free, transformed, so to speak. And sometimes yes, but also you feel exposed, vulnerable, like you're standing in public without the armor you've been wearing for years. This is normal. I want everyone to know that this is part of the process. This doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong. Starting over requires grieving, not because you're sad about your choices, but because you're saying goodbye to versions of yourself that were real and necessary. When I relocated and I stepped back from that professional identity I built over 2 decades, I grieved. Not because I regretted my choice. I made that choice intentionally. I grieved because I was saying goodbye to a version of myself that had served me for so long. You can't build something new while eulogizing the old, but you can acknowledge what was, thank it for its service, and consciously release it. This is understanding that growth doesn't negate what came before. It builds on it. So there's a framework that I like to use that cuts through all the noise about finding yourself. It's simple, but it's definitely clarifying. I'll put the full framework in the description so you can reference it later, but I wanted to walk you through it now. You take a piece of paper and you have 3 columns. Column 1, I would say, is your past identity. That's the version that served you in the past. Column 2 is where it gets a little interesting because this is where you list everything that you're carrying that isn't yours. For example, who are you trying to become based on external pressure? What version of yourself are you performing for other people's comfort? These aren't your beliefs. These are just identifications that you're carrying, okay? And then in column 3, that's the truth. These are facts. It's the real you that's emerging despite of your resistance and the identity you're designing, whether you're admitting it or not. Column 3 may also be a little bit uncomfortable for you to acknowledge because you might realize that you've been exactly who you were becoming for months or for years now, but you've been too afraid to say it out loud or write it down because it just doesn't match column 2. The gap between column 1 and column 2, that is where I would say your grief lives, the mourning process you need to release. The gap between column 2 and 3, that is where your courage is going to shine. That's where your real transformation lives. That's where you admit, I've been trying to become who they want, but I'm actually becoming someone completely different. And the gap between column 1 and 3, That's your proof of your evolution. It's evidence you're not broken, you're not lost, you're just rebuilding. Because when people say that's not like you, there's a statement underneath that statement. What they're really asking is, are you still the person I thought I knew? And the answer might be no. Most of the time, if you are in the process of becoming, it will be no. Not because you've become someone unrecognizable, but because you've stopped performing a version of yourself that was never fully authentic in the first place. This will make people feel very uncomfortable. Let it. Your job is not to stay recognizable. Your job is to stay true. And that requires knowing what you stand on, your non-negotiables. Not the generic things like happiness or love. Those are wonderful. Everyone wants to feel those things, have those things. But specific truths like, I do not perform versions of myself for other people's comfort. I do not apologize for my ambition. I do not abandon my needs to manage other people's emotions. I do not stay small so others can feel big. I do not explain or defend my choices to people. These become your foundation. You're not confused about who you are. You're just afraid to admit it because becoming that person requires letting other people be disappointed in you. You're just waiting for permission for the right time, for circumstances to be perfect before you admit it. And I'm here to tell you, there is no permission slip. There is no right time. There is only the choice you make right now. Every day you spend performing an expired identity is a day you're choosing comfort over truth. As one of my mentors always says, they'll actually be 92 this year. They say comfortable lies create miserable lives. Your mother may not understand. She doesn't have to. Your old friends might feel threatened. That's their work to deal with. It's not yours. Your partner might need time to adjust, but give them that time. But don't stop evolving while they catch up. The question isn't whether people will be uncomfortable with your evolution. Trust me, they will be. The question is, are you willing to be uncomfortable with your stagnation? Because those are the only two options. Evolve and let others adjust, or stay small so others can stay comfortable. The next time someone says to you, that's not like you, I want you to hear it differently, not as a criticism, but as a confirmation that your evolution is actually working. I'm Sandy Coffey, the Lifestyle Liaison, and this is the power of becoming. If you want the full 3 versions framework that I mentioned earlier, along with frameworks from upcoming episodes, I've created a living document that updates throughout the season. Head over to my Substack. I have a dedicated post just for that. You'll get today's framework right away, and each week I'll add the new episode frameworks to the same documents. And of course, links below. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.